Welcome to the Onstage Podcast, where we deep dive into the power of music and entertainment. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have a wonderful special guest. His name's Tony Mantor. I believe that's the way you pronounce it, Mantor, right?
That's correct.
Cool. Now, he's established and successful American singer-songwriter, pianist, podcast host, and record-charting music producer who is celebrating working in Nashville for more than 30 years. A classically trained pianist at heart since he was 8 years old, Tony's musical journey began in the late 70s just outside of Madison, Maine, where he was born and raised on a dairy farm. That's going to be an interesting conversation. Musically inspired by iconic artists like Elvis Presley, Cher, and Karen Carpenter, Tony's piano skills evolved into him writing and performing his own songs, both as a solo artist and in rock bands throughout his teens and early 20s in his home state of Maine and New England. Tony found a peaceful refuge in music, which became his life's calling. Thank you, Tony, for joining us tonight on the Onstage Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. I know it took us a long time to set you up. I know there's so many times when we canceled and this and that, but I'm so glad that we're able to do that now.
Yeah.
Tony, what inspired you to start playing the piano at such a young age?
Well, we had an old beat-up piano that was in our house, and I would go over there and I would just play on it and just pound on it like any kid would. And my mother looked at me and she said, if you're going to show that interest, maybe we'll see what you can do. So because it was old and it was worn and torn, she got it refurbished with new felts and new keys and just went through the whole piano. And I took lessons and just started enjoying music.
That's amazing, Tony. Do you remember what the very first song you were playing on the piano was? Mine, it was Mary Had a Little Lamb. What was yours?
Well, actually, a cute little story about from where I went to Berkeley to where I started playing piano is the very first thing that I did when my piano teacher decided that she was going to teach me was she gave me the big note for piano beginners. And I learned off from that. And then when I went to Berkeley several years later, my improv teacher put a book in front of me, and it was the same book that she had given me before I first started. And I looked at him, I said, that's the book that my teacher gave me when I very first started the piano. And he looked at me and said, then you should know it. And from there, he taught me so much on improv. It was unbelievable.
So how come it was the piano that you only wanted to learn? How come you didn't want to learn any other instrument?
Well, it was because that was really what was accessible to me. My mother had the piano, and she was willing to fix it up. And I really didn't get into guitar or anything else because we didn't have one around. And so I just kind of stuck with the piano, and that's kind of what I've done.
That's interesting. We had an artist who said that the only reason they got into a guitar because one day they found someone had thrown out a guitar in the garbage. They picked it up and they started playing it. So, yeah, that's basically some stories today.
Yeah, that's good.
So you were in Nashville for 30 years, but you actually were born and raised on the dairy farm. Is this meaning that your father was a farmer?
Yeah. We were. I was born and raised on a dairy farm, and we had probably 600-700 acres of land and two different farms that we'd bought. One was the main farm. The other farm was the one that my other brother, worked. And so I grew up taking care of cows, raising cows. We had some horses at a time. We had different livestock. And that was a big thing. I did my chores every day, and I grew up working. So it was a good way to grow up. I was outside of the town that I grew up in, and about 6 miles outside of town. And there was a big difference between country life and living in a town. And I noticed that, but I was really happy that I was born and raised on that farm, because my father taught me a lot of things that I use today in my life because of being on that farm.
So do you think being on that farm influenced your music?
Um, no, I don't think so. It gave me time to work on music, because they allowed me the time to practice it every night. Um, but the big thing was, a lot of my friends in town, they would get together and hang around on the street corner, or go to friends, or go to whatever they did. I didn't have that availability because I was 6 miles out. I didn't have a driver's license at the time, so I couldn't just kind of bop around like they did. So I had choices, basically work, play the piano, do my studies, find other things to do outside to entertain myself, without having people around to hang around with. So it allowed me to really get into what I wanted to do, and the music was part of that. So I wouldn't say it influenced me, but I would say that it gave me the time to do it, because I wasn't always hanging around with friends.
That's pretty interesting you said it, because you were musically inspired by iconic artists like Elvis Presley, Cher, and Karen Carpenter. Three totally different genres. Who did you like better, Elvis, Cher, or Karen Carpenter? Because these are the '70s. These are like some of Cher's eclectic songs, like "Thieves, Thieves, Tramp and Thieves," and all his time with Sonny Bono is amazing.
Right. Well, the very first person that I ever saw on TV was Elvis.
Hmm.
So we had a toy guitar that I had. It wasn't, and I would just kind of play with him when I saw him on TV and everything. And I thoroughly enjoyed what he was. Then I would listen to the radio, and I'd hear, Creedence or
Mm.
Steppenwolf, or bands like that. And because Cher was on in that time with that song that you just brought up, because Karen Carpenter, the Carpenters, they had their big hits. The difference was, Elvis was a personality all by himself, and the style that he put out there. Cher, it was Sonny and Cher at the time, so it was more of a duo, and it was more her singing, but it was different style. And then, because Karen Carpenter had such a soothing voice, that
Yeah,
when you listen to it, it would like just
beautiful.
melt you.
Hmm.
So they all had their differences, but yet they all fell within that same collective pop field that you could listen to and hear on the same radio station.
Yeah, back then when I was a boy, "Thieves, Thieves, Tramps and Thieves" from Cher, um, "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road" by Elton John, all those just bring back memories. Even when I hear them today, I know exactly where I was.
Yeah,
Um, Talking to my mother when even Barry Manilow's um, the New England song, I think, when it came up, like all these
right.
songs and eclectic songs, just and the Carpenters and Solitaire and Closer. I mean, like, yeah, it brings me back. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's the great thing about music. It
yeah,
it brings you, it can bring back great times, it can bring back sad times. It just, you hear a song, and it'll take you back in time to a certain thing that was happening in your life, whether it's good or bad, just something that was happening. So yeah, that's the great thing about music.
yeah, and a song will do that to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have remembered it. I remember this song. You listened to something in the coffee shop. Yes, I
Right.
remember. But otherwise, it wouldn't come to your mind. That's why music is so powerful.
Yes.
Um, Tony, can you tell us about your first experience performing live? What was that like for you?
Well, my very first experience was we had piano recitals with my teacher, and all the other kids that she taught, her husband taught, and they would put that together in a night, and we we would go up there and play our instrument and in front of people, and that was my first experience. But I'll tell you something that I always will remember is there was a time that my piano teacher wanted me to do a piano duet with another kid that was playing piano on two separate pianos.
Wow.
They took the pianos and they took these upright pianos and they put them back to back. And he played on his piano, I played on mine. The interesting part that I'll always remember is that I had that song memorized. I knew exactly how to play it. So I went up there and I set my sheet music in front of me just like I normally would. And I was ready to play. And the teacher got up and it was kind of a laugh to all the people. But I looked at her and I had put the sheet music upside down. And so she noticed that. So she got up there real quick and turned it upside back right and went off. And then afterwards, when I finished it, I told her, I said, it didn't matter. I didn't even need the sheet music. I had it memorized. And so she just kind of smiled, but it was kind of something I'll always remember.
You pulled a Victor Borge. Remember that one where you would put sheet music down and he'd play something and you oops, and you'd go like this?
Yeah. But this really happened to me. I mean, that was part of his little stick that he did. Whereas this one, was just, I was a kid and I had it memorized and it just happened.
Which makes me think that maybe that you can play all music upside down. It would be amazing to see what it sounds like. Now I know that the the Star Trek Next Generation theme, if you play that backwards,
right?
You ready for this? It's the Voyager theme.
Yeah, well, if you the interesting part of the Moody Blues, one of their songs, is they played one of their intros backwards, and it was all that string instrumentation. And I can't remember the name of the song now, but it was great. And then it went into it, and it just happened. They went into the studio and was working on it, and then somehow it got on the front end and it was backwards, and they all thought it was cool, and they just picked it up from that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what was it like touring with Ronnie McDowell in the 70s? Tell me that.
Well, I did a short tour with him. It wasn't a long one. The interesting part about that is how that all happened. Is I had some friends of mine that wanted to go to Nashville, and they didn't have any transportation, so I did. So they came to me and said, "Well, let's go to Nashville." And I was more into pop and rock and that style of music. So my first inclination was, why would I want to go to Nashville? That's a hick town. And so I did. I went, and as I drove into Nashville, I saw the Nashville skyline. I started to realize that Nashville was just like Boston, New York, and all these other cities. It was just concrete and steel. There was no difference, just placement of where it is. So we went there, and we walked Music Row like everybody does, and walked into different places. And they were songwriters. They weren't singers. They were just songwriters. So we walked into this one place that liked their songs and wanted to do a demo on it. So the next day, we're in this recording studio with some of the best musicians in Nashville. The piano player didn't show up. For whatever reason, it didn't show up. So they looked at him and said, "Hey, he knows how to play." So I wound up playing on a song demo, and then this guy comes in that was a record producer and had an independent record label at the time, and he was fairly well known in Nashville. He comes up to me. He knows everybody in the room except for me. So he comes up to me, introduces himself. We talk, and he says, "What are you doing for the rest of the summer?" And I said, "Well, I've taken the summer off to travel and figure out what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to go back to Maine. I'm going to start my band and get back into the scene for the winter." So he goes, "Well, how would you like to go on the road with Ronnie McDowell for a while?" And I didn't know who Ronnie McDowell was, and this actually was before Elvis died, and it was before he had The King Is Gone. So he was just another singer out there trying to make it like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Yeah," I said, I'd consider it. So he sent me over to the Columbia Records building in the back, which is where his manager had his office. And I walk in, and there's Ronnie and Slim Williamson. So he looks at me and he says, "You're the piano player?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, do you do any singing? I said, yeah, I can do background vocals and lead vocals. He goes, well, we need that too. So he goes, you any good? And I said, I'm okay. And he looked at me and I'll always remember this meeting with him. He looked at me and he said very sternly, he goes, you're in Nashville now. He goes, if someone asked you if you're any good, you don't say you're okay. He says, you say, yeah, I'm good. He goes, and then you better be able to back it up. So then he asked me, so I'm going to ask you again, are you any good? And I said, yeah, I'm okay. And he looked at me and he goes, you're hired. He goes, just from the person that sent me over. So I didn't have my gear with me because it was in Maine. So they actually paid to have all my gear shipped down from Maine to Nashville. And then I rented a U-Haul to tow behind my car. And I went on the road with him and did the tour.
Wow. Do you think that shaped your career, touring with him?
Well, I don't know if it shaped it, but it did help me a little bit because I helped him in several different ways because he made me band leader because a few things happened within the band on the road. Wow. So I didn't get paid any extra money for being band leader, and I got him through the session and all that, got him through the tour. So then I called him up. I said, hey, you owe me. He goes, I paid you. I said, yeah, you did. I said, but I'm not asking for any more money. I'm just asking for you to do me a favor. He goes, okay, what's that favor? And I got to know him real good, and we got along real good. I said, look, I'm not country. I said, I'm trying to make my own mark. If I run across somebody that I need to know if they're any good or if they're crooks or whatever, I want to be able to call you and say, hey, I've just run up across this guy. He wants to do some business with me. Yay or nay? And he goes, okay, no problem. He goes, I'll help you. He goes, but you know what? Before you do any of that, he goes, I've got a guy for you to call in New York. He goes, and I want you to call him. So I call the guy, and it turns out he's the manager for Blondie.
Blondie, wow.
So I talk with the guy, and he goes, send me your demo. So I sent him the stuff, and he listens to it. He calls me. He goes, man, I got to say, your project is probably the third best project I've heard all year long. Wow. So I'm going, oh, wow. All right. Maybe I finally got somebody that can work with me. And I said, when do we work? What do we do? And he goes, man, I just don't have the time. He goes, because you're not the best. He goes, I need the very best. He goes, and you're the third best. He goes, you got a few things to work on. And he told me some things that I needed to work on. And when I hung up the phone, I had two choices. I could be really, really ticked off, or I could say, you know what? I learned something out of that, and this is what I need to do, which is what I did. So the Ronnie McDowell experience didn't change my life working with Ronnie, but because of his manager helping me out, contacting me with this guy, it set the pace for some of the things that I needed to do to shape my career so that I could keep moving forward.
Wow, that's interesting, Tony. So how did you manage that transition from Maine to Nashville? Were there any challenges you faced when you first moved there?
Well, before I moved there, I was traveling back and forth, recording, doing session work and recording songs for myself and releasing records and doing that. And what happened to make me make the transition to Nashville was that I had two producers who was working with me, Gary Paxton and Bob Millsap. Bob Millsap.
Wow.
Yeah, Bob Millsap produced several hit records, and he also published the song that Anne Murray cut, You Needed Me. Mm-hmm. Gary Paxton was the lead singer of the Argyles, Alley Oop, and he also published the Monster Mash. So these two guys were producing me, guiding me, and I became really good friends with Bob, and he gave me a lot of things and ideas to do while I was doing a lot of this stuff. The problem with what he gave me is because he was so used to working with major labels that had unlimited amounts of money to throw at things. And I was working as an independent label with an independent label that had limited amount of money. I had to take what he said and transpose it from a major label deal to how we could do it as an independent. So, but he helped me. And then finally, after several years of working with him, he called me up and he says, look, he goes, Gary's getting ready to retire. I'm getting ready to move out of Nashville. You are the only singer that I've worked with that continually asks me questions about how I do this, why I do this, and you just dig into it. He goes, you understand music. You understand how the business works. Why don't you get yourself off the road, move to Nashville, and do what we do, production development? So I had to really think about that because I had a family at the time and I was going to be uprooting the whole family, moving 1,300 miles away. Do I do this, or do I continue trying to be, an artist like everybody else? So what changed my mind and what made me realize that it was the best move for me to move to Nashville was one of the people that I knew that had a big hit record, several hit records, as a matter of fact, was on the road all the time. He and I were in the studio working on a project together. One of the session players came up to him and said, man, I saw your son in town yesterday. And because this was before cell phones and all that kind of stuff. And he looked at him, he goes, man, I didn't realize that he was in town. I'll have to give him a call. So here he had a 25-year-old son, but he didn't know his 25-year-old son because he was on the road so much, doing so many things. That right there, I listened to it, listened to the whole thing, saw what was going on. I said, that can't be me. So that's kind of what helped me make my decision to make the move. So that way I could be home at nights. And if I had to travel, I wasn't traveling all the time. So that way I could see my kids play baseball or soccer or whatever, and have that interaction, which he didn't have.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the conversation with Bob Millsap and Gary Paxton, do you think that had something to do with where you are today?
Yeah, they taught me a lot. There was a lot of things I had to learn on my own, but they did teach me a lot. And when I made the move, the biggest thing that I had to do was I did a production, and the production was for a singer that had come to me, wanted me to do some stuff. So I hired the same people that I'd been using that were on my sessions with Bob and Gary. And the conversations would always go to Bob and Gary, Bob and Gary, Bob and Gary. And it's like, man, I'm the one that's writing the checks for you. How about making the conversation about Tony? I'm the producer here. So because of that, and they weren't being mean or anything, it's just they always connected the dots of me and Bob and Gary, and they never made the separation that now I'm on my own without Bob and Gary. So I changed all the session players and started all fresh. I started creating my own entourage. And so over the last 30 years now, I've worked with so many different great musicians here in Nashville, and there's not hardly anybody that I can't call and say, hey, I want you on a session next Tuesday. Are you available?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's how that all happened.
Did you ever know one of the lead players of a group called the Ides of March, Scott May? Because I interviewed him a few weeks ago, so I wondered maybe you came across him too.
I know the name, but I don't think we've ever met that I can remember.
So I haven't actually uploaded his episode yet. I think next couple of weeks. What motivated you to start writing your own songs?
Well, I'd been writing since I started. I co-wrote with a lot of bandmates, and it was just something that I felt I needed to do. But ironically, a lot of the songs I cut were of people that I worked with or had worked with, that I heard their song. It's like, oh man, I got to cut that song. I love it, and it's not mine, but it's okay. So I've got some songs that I've cut that I've written or co-written. And I've got a lot of other songs that I haven't had anything to do with it, as far as writing, that I've cut. So it hasn't been a make it or break it for me. It's just something I do because I enjoy it. And I've been so busy the last several years that I haven't written a song in a long time.
That's interesting. I know that a lot of artists say, like, I always ask them that a song has something to do with experience. And I always bring up this song by the Imagine Dragons. Dan Reynolds, his brother's wife, Alicia, she died of cancer. So he wrote a song called Wrecked.
Yeah.
So it's based on experience. So can you share the story behind your first charting single?
My first charting single, that was just something that was pitched to me because they knew that I was going to be recording. That my producers said, "Hey, we'll get you some songs and see if you can like any of them." And I pitched some of the songs that I wrote, and it was kind of a collaboration of I cut a couple of songs that I wrote and a couple of songs that were written by others. And when it came to releasing it, I just kind of liked the one that was unfortunately not mine better than mine. And the promoters and everything said, we really think this stands a good shot. So we put it out there.
I'd like to know the inspiration behind your song. I've got it all together somewhere.
Well, that wasn't written by me, so that song there was just one of those songs that was I just kind of liked the fact that it was a kind of all over the place, and it had this, I've got it all together somewhere. I just love that whole vibe. So I said, man, I like it. Let's do it. And it turned out it did well for me.
Why not? So, Tony, how did you come up with the idea for "Don't Tell My Heart"? Don't tell my heart what?
Yeah, that song was another song that unfortunately I didn't write, but I really liked, and it was just such a nice song and had such a nice vibe to it, big ballad. And I wasn't really well known for ballads at the time. I did more up-tempo stuff. So I'm going, I really like this. So let's take and do something that's a little bit different than people won't expect out of me.
Yeah.
And so we did that and released it, and it did okay.
Yeah. What led you to start your own company, Plateau Music? What was that one about?
Well, how that all worked is when I moved to Nashville, I started a production development company. I called it Plateau Music. Mm-hmm. And it was basically producing new singers, developing new singers, if they working with them on their songs, making it better, just really putting it together so that when I finished with them, we could pitch them to a major label and they would compete. So I started that in 1993 here in Nashville, but I'd actually started the Plateau Music back in 1991, but I didn't use it a whole lot until I moved. And then I took and kept doing that until 2005. Oh. And then 2005, I was recording a singer, and they wanted to get it put out to radio quicker than pitching it. So we decided to turn Plateau Music into a label and put the singer out to radio and see what it could do. Wow. So the song did well. I released several songs between 2005 and 2010. And then in 2012, I started recording Jackie Wilson's son, Bobby, and we started putting songs out on him. Then Mila Mason, who was a former Atlantic record singer, I recorded and put a song out on her on the label. Then Debby Campbell, which is Glenn Campbell's daughter, put several songs out on her. A country artist that I was working with called Sam Austin. And then lately I've been working with Donny Most of Happy Days, and we put out songs on him. Wow. So that's kind of the development of Plateau Music. And it really wasn't meant to be. It just kind of one of those things that kind of happened.
That's very interesting. And what do you enjoy most about producing music for other artists?
Well, the one thing I enjoy about producing other artists is I get to take a song, record them, and then take them to a level that they weren't expecting to be, and making them competitive so that we could go to a major label and sit down with that label. And they might not sign them, but they're at least going to consider them and listen and talk about it. So that's the beauty of it. I truly enjoy the production and development part of it, because it's the creating part. And when you're creating, it's nothing better than taking something from nothing and turning it into, it's like when a cook makes a cake, takes all those ingredients and puts that in, and then when the cake's done, it looks like $1 million. So that's kind of my philosophy, is I'm putting all the ingredients together. Now we're baking that cake, and then when it's done, it's going to look good, sound good, and it'll compete.
Well, okay, so you're saying that you have to have all the components to a cake, but is there one or two ingredients you can remove from a cake that nobody would know and it still tastes delicious? Like, for instance, what are the components of a song that if you don't have it, it's not a song?
Well, it just depends upon the song. I mean, it's like I always start out when I'm recording with a 4 or 5 piece band. I get a good rhythm section, and then either like a steel or a fiddle or acoustic guitar, something to fill in. But the 4 piece is the solid rhythm section. Once I get that down, then I get the singer to sing, get it all where I want it to be. Then I sit back and I listen to it. And then that's when you say, okay, do I need to add anything? Is there anything I need to add for texture? Sometimes it's a steel guitar that's not there that you bring in to add a little texture to it. Sometimes it's just a little fiddle, a little part, or whatever whatever it might be, organ or synth or whatever. But I start out with that 4 piece: piano, bass, guitar, and drums. Once I start with that 4 piece, then you've got, you might not need to add anything, or you add a few little things, and then that's when the textures and the layers come in to make it what you hear when it goes to radio.
Like, for instance, different genres of music, like country music, you got that twang, like the twang that sounds like the it's country music, not only because they wear cowboy hats, but can you take a country tune, one by maybe Tim McGraw, like "Live Like You Were Dying," and turn it into an opera tune? Is it still a country song?
I have taken songs that I've taken R&B songs, I've taken pop songs and turned them into country-ish.
Oh,
I've
wow.
taken country songs and turned them into pop, R&B. I've turned pop songs into R&B. I mean, you can take any song and make it your own, as long as you've got the idea of what you want to do to it. If you're just throwing in the blender and blending it, you're going to get what you get. But if you know what to add and how to take and get that rhythm that you want, or that flow or that vibe that you're looking for, you can turn any song into anything you want.
Okay. What are your thoughts about artificial intelligence in music? Like saying, I want Elvis Presley to sing Bohemian Rhapsody, and it sounds like, oh wow, that's pretty good. What do you think of that?
I hate it.
Yeah.
Okay. About a month ago, I had a friend of mine that has a publishing company here in Nashville. A song was pitched to him. He listened to it, and he's talking with the songwriter. He goes, I hate to tell you this, the song's okay. I like the singer better. And it was an AI singer.
Oh, yeah.
So,
That's
if you start messing with products that take away the ability for the person to really create, and they just let something else do it, then are you truly creating? Because when you go back to the 50s and the 60s, or back to the 20s and the 30s, and you listen to some of the old time classics, they have, if you listen to Fly Me to the Moon, or you listen to I've Got You Under My Skin, that was not done with artificial intelligence. That was done with somebody sitting down and writing something, composing the music, putting together something that just turned out to be timeless. You take and start putting computer-generated product out there, you're computing something, you're making something that might be good for the day, but is it going to be good 50 years from now? Because you're going to have so much garbage, and when I say garbage, I'm talking about other stuff that's been computer generated that has no feeling behind it, because the one thing when you take somebody that, and I guess a perfect example is LeAnn Rimes.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember back when LeAnn Rimes was about 15 or 16 years ago
Yeah.
old, okay, she sang a song. I cannot remember the name of the song, but it was one of the biggest songs of the year, and it was up for a Grammy and awards. And
How Do I Live Without You?
yeah, that's the song. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So you had two singers that sang that song.
Oh.
One was like 30 something years old, and you had LeAnn Rimes.
Oh, what?
Okay, so
Uh-oh.
if you listen, and I'm trying to remember.
You're trying to destroy my favorite song here. Go ahead. Collapse it.
I'm trying to I'm trying to remember who sang that song. It was I can't remember the name now. But at the time, it was somebody really, really, really big.
Yeah, I think yeah, it was a cover song, wasn't it? Yeah, but I think LeAnn Rimes did sing a better version of this cover song. We don't know who sings it, but
LeAnn Rimes sang, yeah, How Do I Live? Yeah, and LeAnn Rimes sang the song, almost flawlessly.
yeah.
But the thing is, if you listen to the other singer that sang it, she felt it. LeAnn Rimes was 15 or 16 years old. She was just singing words. So she sang the words really, really good. And when you listen to the song, you go, man, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
But when you listen to the other singer that sang it, you could hear the passion. You could hear the emotion. You could hear almost like she felt that pain.
That's true.
And if you don't have that kind of ingredient in a song, and you're just putting songs out there for value of songs, then you don't feel the pain, you don't feel that emotion, then the music isn't going to transform into anything other than a good song. There's a reason why if you listen to a song, you go back to your kids, 15 or 16-year-old, because if you heard a song by Steppenwolf, or you heard a song by Elvis, or you heard a song by Karen Carpenter, you heard songs that had emotion, that had passion, that had all that in it. If you hear a song that somebody just sings it and they're singing it, like a robot, but they're singing it really good, you don't hear that passion. It's just another good song. So to me, you've got to have all the ingredients. You've got to take and be able to, as a singer, that's what I try and do when I'm producing them. I try to get them feeling that song and putting that emotion in that song, so that when a person hears that song on the radio, they're reaching out and grabbing them by the neck and say, "Do you feel this?"
Yeah, that's true.
So that's kind of the way I look at songs. And that's why when you come down to AI generated songs, there's no compassion there. There's no feeling there. It's just punching perfect notes in and putting a voice into it, and then you get a song. There's nothing there that's going to last. It's just like I ask a lot of my friends that are in their teens, and like my granddaughter, for perfect example, she's a big Elvis fan. She's 14 years old. She loves Elvis. But she's also a Swiftie. So I said, okay, let me ask you this. I said, 50 years from now, Elvis will be out there 100 years. Taylor Swift will be out there for 50. Who's going to be remembered? She goes, Elvis. She didn't even think about it. Elvis. So even Taylor Swift right now is putting out a lot of great songs.
Yeah.
But is she going to be remembered timelessly like Elvis 50 years from now? Or will Elvis be 100 years from his death and still be remembered?
Well, that's what I wonder about Taylor Swift putting out all these albums and songs. I wonder if she's lending her voice and saying, listen, I'm going to be doing a lot of tours. You can take my voice and add it to these songs and come up with albums. Because how are you going to deal with your mental health? If it's all her, then great. But I think AI is just being used too much, because I've heard, I don't know if you ever heard of the group Aqua with Lena Nystrom. She's saying Barbie Girl.
Mhm.
Well, they put it through an AI and had Johnny Cash sing it. It's really
Yeah.
weird, but yeah. So what makes you think you can't yourself do a duet with David Bowie? I mean,
Right,
you know,
exactly. I mean,
yeah.
and a perfect example, I just remembered who did that is Trisha Yearwood that sang that song.
Oh, right. Yes.
And
Trisha Yearwood.
and it was How Do I Live? And Leanne Rimes was 14 at the time. And it was written by Diane Warren,
Yes.
which is a great songwriter.
Yes.
So Diane Warren had all these lyrics in there that they're just so compassionate. And when Trisha sang it, I can't remember. Trisha was probably in her 30s. I mean, she felt it. You could feel it. With
Yeah.
Leanne Rimes, she was just singing it.
Hmm.
So there's a difference between just singing something and singing it good and really getting a vocal performance out of something. So that's to me is what sells these songs is the vocal performance and how the listener feels after they've heard the singer singing it.
That's true. I totally agree with you. Wow. Yeah. Except using AI in a good way, extracting the vocals from John Lennon's vocals from the piano to create that last Beatles song now and then, it can be used for good.
Well,
So,
with everything that's going on right now with electronics
yeah,
and I mean, you can take any Beatles song and you can remaster them. You can take any Beatles song and you can take and bring the voice out of it and then put it in something else and have a duet going with somebody. I mean, all that stuff is possible. It's just like when you're doing these holograms and all that. You can be singing with somebody that's dead because they've created this hologram.
yeah,
So the the all the technology is there to do varied things, but the difference is don't try and pass it off as something that is like, don't take a song and put an AI voice to it and try and pass it off as human.
yeah.
Bring out something that is unique, and create something with a visual. Whereas you're singing with Elvis, and they cut the screen, and you're singing with Elvis, and you're doing the technological stuff, but you're not trying to pass off something that's not really true.
That's right. That's right. AI is way out of hand.
And it's
Wow.
and the thing is with AI, they can create anything now, so you don't even know if it's real or not.
I
I
know.
mean,
You know.
I saw a here a few weeks ago. I can't remember who it was. Florida in college football lost to somebody, and then they had this picture of the coach, and he was yelling and screaming and calling the other coach all kinds of names and swearing and carrying on. It was all AI generated. And everybody thought that, a lot of people thought that was real. And then they
Mm,
finally found out that it wasn't real. And it could have hurt this guy's reputation because he wouldn't do that. But now,
mhm.
now they're saying what a poor sport he was for doing that. It wasn't even him. So there's a lot of things that AI can generate that just aren't good for society.
No, no. Exactly right, Tony. Wow. So now you were mentioning earlier that you were producing music for Bobby Brooks Wilson. What was that like?
When I first started working with him, that was in 2012. I had all of Motown watching me. Barry
Nice.
Gordy, all the way down, everybody.
Hmm.
And talk about pressure, because they wanted to hear what's Jackie's son going to sound like. He's been produced by other people, but the productions weren't up to what people were expecting. And here's another guy trying to do it. So when I Barry Gordy called me up and he says, when you finish with that CD, I'd like you to send me a copy.
Hmm.
So I did. And I had Lenny Welch, if you remember him, Since I Fell for You, big hit back in the 60s.
Hmm.
He called me up. He goes, I'm going to be in Nashville. I'd like to hang out with you a little bit. He come out and hung out with me and told me stories of Jackie and different things that he was doing with Jackie. And it was really good. I got to meet a lot of the Motown people. I had Motown people that I grew up listening to that would call me or send me an email saying, "Man, I love what you did. We got to find a way to work together on a project." It just it was pretty cool, actually. And the project turned out really good. We had 4 hit records off the album. We created a lot of good things. Matter of fact, he's doing an interview right now, for a special they're doing.
Wow.
That he's recording right now with somebody in New York. So yeah, it turned out well.
Yeah. What about the memorable experience working with Debby Campbell? Now, was this Glenn Campbell's daughter or wife?
Glenn Campbell's first daughter.
First daughter. Okay. So, what was the memorable experience working with Debby Campbell and sharing more about your tribute production to Glenn Campbell?
Well, what was kind of cool. This was right before Glenn died. Actually, he passed away right before we cut the last 4 songs of the project. So he never did get a chance to hear the whole thing. But it was some of the songs that she had done with him, some of his favorite songs, and it was just a collection of really good songs. It was a tribute to her father, and it was really good working with her because she's his first daughter, and I always say that she's the female Glenn Campbell because her voice is so silky smooth and it's just very easy to listen to. She sings well. She did. If you go back into YouTube and you look at Glenn Campbell and Debby Campbell, you can find that she was traveling with him all the time and singing on stage with him, harmonizing with him.
Yeah.
It was really good. It was a great project.
It was tragedy what happened to him. I can't believe it. When talking about songs in the 70s, the Southern Nights, I always listen to that song. Glenn Campbell, Southern Nights. Whew, I loved it. It was a great song.
See, now talk about songs that will bring you back. Rhinestone Cowboy was the one for me, 1975. That song was playing all summer long when I was doing what I was doing, and I always remember that song. So whenever I hear that song, it takes me back to my days in 75 summer.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. What did you feel like when Plateau Music won Label of the Year in 2019? That was one just recently.
Yeah, I mean that felt good. I mean, I'm not in it for awards. I don't worry about awards. My award is a reward of people liking what I do. I've been on the ballot for a Grammy for producer. I've had several of my artists on the ballot for Grammys, and I'm really glad for them and happy for them. And if ever won a Grammy, that'd be great. But I don't look at my career of what I'm doing that, man, if I don't get that Grammy or if I don't get this award, my career has not been a success, because I've done a lot of good things. I've done a lot of good positive things, had a lot of hit records out there I've been involved with a lot of great singers through my career. So I look back at my body of work of what I've done. I'm very proud of what I've done. And I sit back and can be very, what's the old saying, comfortable in my skin of what I've done. So I don't worry about the awards. If they come, that's great. If they don't, that's fine. I just enjoy the people that I've met and some of the people I work with, and just hopefully it just keeps going,
Well, what does it mean to you to be included in the Grammy ballots for Producer of the Year? What's your mindset? How does it make you feel?
Well, it's nice that I got recognized for that. It's a good feeling, but it's not going to change my life. It's like kind of like I tell people, a lot of my country people that I've worked with or that I'm around, they always say, "Oh, I want to play on the Grand Ole Opry. That will make it for me." No, it won't. The Grand Ole Opry is just another venue. The only difference is it's one of the most well-known venues in the world. But just because you play or perform on the Opry does not mean that it's going to catapult your career to where you want to go. It's just a thing that you can add into your resume and your body of work that, hey, not only have I played here, here, and here, but I also performed on the Grand Ole Opry. Because I know several friends of mine that have performed at the Grand Ole Opry, and you wouldn't even know who they are, because they play before the night starts, or the intros act, or whatever, but yet they played on the Grand Ole Opry. So I don't look at all these things as oh wow, this is the biggest thing in the world. I just look at this, man, this is kind of cool. This is nice. I'm here. I've done this, that I've been part of this. That's all great stuff. But it's just part of what I've done and what I do. And I don't let it create that chip on my shoulder so that I get this false bravado that I'm bigger than I am.
Or arrogance, yeah, big head. So how do
Yeah.
you deal with your mental health then? You're going through all these things, and how do you stay motivated?
Well, my motivation is when I'm seeing singers that I've worked with that are in the charts. I see ways that I'm helping people get where they want to be. That's my motivation. Um, I tell every singer, you've got to have ego to step on that stage, perform, but always make sure that ego is kept in check so that it doesn't control you and hurt you. So use your ego to be able to go on that stage and say, here I am. But don't forget that when you walk off that stage, the ego's got to be held in check so that when people come up to you, you don't push them off and say, well, you're just little people. You don't do that kind of stuff.
The thing is, like, the the joke is that we had I'm not going to give his name, but he's famous. He walks into a restaurant, and fame has gotten to his head. So he says, "Yeah, I like the same table. Sorry, you don't have. Do you know who I am?" So no, didn't your parents tell you? You know?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's like the entertainment world has changed because if you go back to the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, you didn't have YouTube, you didn't have internet, you didn't have social media, you didn't have any of these things.
Cell
So,
phones.
yeah, exactly. So you had if someone was coming to do a show, you would go see the show, and that's why you had all these screaming girls, at Elvis and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all that, because they heard them on the radio. Now they're getting a chance to see them in life, for the first time. It's exciting. Their adrenaline's going. It's concert. It's live. The music is, all that. I think we've lost some of that feeling over the years because now anybody can Google anybody. They can look at it on YouTube. They can pick them apart. They can do all these things. And I don't know if they have that same feeling that they did back then when they go see an artist now. Now, some of them might, and I'm not trying to take away anything from people's feelings, but it's just a different era and a different way of doing things. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not so good. So you just have to be the one that makes that decision, I guess.
That's true. Tony, what was your role in documentary to session players?
That was a documentary that was started back in late 2008, I think, 7, somewhere in that range. And they was going to try and make a documentary series out of it. And it was the part that I was in there was 3 parts. There was one part that showed the session players working with a producer and the engineers to get a demo song to pitch to other artists. And then they had another part that would show the session players working with the producer and engineers to do a instrumental for like a movie, something like that. And then my part was how the session players work and create with a producer that's working to do a development project with a singer so that they can either pitch them to radio or pitch them to the labels. So my part was the producer on the development part. And I got a chance to work with a lot of great players and we got behind the scenes stuff and it was really kind of cool. It was a very, very nice little documentary they put together. And I think now people can find it online and it's, it kind of just shows how the interaction is, and it had interviews with me and my artists on how we work together, had interviews with different players, how we work. So it was well put together. It was pretty nice. I enjoyed it.
Wow, that's amazing. We have the Metalworks record recording studio just up the street, and every month they do like a tour, and then they actually were able to seconder the whole Bohemian Rhapsody, the whole thing that actually was Brian May and the rest of the cast, and they separated each track, and you get to hear it and everything.
Yeah.
And what Can you describe a typical day in your life as a music producer? Like, what do you do?
Well, when I'm working on songs, what I do is I get the players together that I want for the songs. Then we get set up in the studio. We get all the sounds the way that we want them, so that all the sounds are coming through when we can record them at the levels we want them, so they sound good. Then I take and I have all the songs arranged and charted out. So then the players, we sit around and I give them all the charts, and then I play them the song one time, and they listen and they watch the chart. Then I tell them, okay, this is where I want you to do this, and I'll tell them kind of ideas that I have. And then once they're finished listening, then they kind of go through it a little bit to get a feel for what they're going to do, and then we start laying the tracks. And when they play that first note, when they're really tracking, you would think that these players have played this song 100 times. It's that good, because these are the best players in the world. That what they do. They play it on hundreds and hundreds of hit records, number ones. And then once we get it laid back, one of the guys might say, I'm feeling this. Can I try this? And I'll say, yeah, go ahead. And I let them play it. And then if I like it, I'll keep it. If I don't, I'll say, no, I like what you did better, first better. And then once that's done, then we get all that done. And then when it's all done, we move on to the next song. Then once that's all done, then the next day I load it up on my computer, get all the tracks lined up, get the sound EQ'd, get all that so it's good to sing to. Then I get my singer in, and we sing to the songs, and we get the songs done, so that usually do like one a day. And wow. then after we get to the last one, then the next day we start tweaking. And I'll spend as much time tweaking the song, making it right, as I did getting the song the first initial time vocally. Then once that's done, then I'll start getting into overdubs, background vocals, all that. Then I get with my engineer and we start mixing, and we start working and getting all those songs together so that they sound right. And then when they're ready, then we master them. And then hopefully one of them's ready to, go to radio or do something.
Yeah, this recording studio up the street, actually, Prince recorded Musicology up there, and they have a whole bunch of photos, autographed photos. Nelly Furtado was there, and I asked a question. I said to the soundboard record, the sound designer and music producer, said, "How long does it take to song creation of a song from beginning to end?" And he said that could take anywhere from a few months to a whole year just to come up with one song. I was like, wow, 1 year for a song? What?
Well, they're not working on it every day, of course. They're at least I don't think they are. In most cases, they're not. Technically, what I have in a 3.5 minute song, I can have anywhere between 50 and 100 hours.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So, and then when it's done, then I'll take and set it aside for a little while. And then a couple of days later, I'll come back and listen to it. And then I'll listen to it and see if I hear anything that I want changed. And they can be subtle little things. I mean, like one time I had a song done and was getting ready to take it to, and the promoters and the management, and we all got together in this room, and they was going through the songs. They said, we want to release this song. I'm going, wow. I'll say, and I said, I got to remix that. And they said, what do you mean? I said, there's something in that song that bothers me. I said, it's fine for an album because nobody would ever pick it up. But if it's going to go to radio, I said, I got to go back and I got to look at this thing. And they all looked at me as if I was crazy, so I took it back, and the engineer and I started listening to it. We started stripping things down, and ultimately it came down. There was a guitar part and a background vocal part that was rubbing against each other.
Oh.
But not so much that most people wouldn't hear it, but subliminally you might, so I can't remember which one I lowered, but I lowered one of them and it took away that rub and it smoothed it out. And then I left everything else the way it was and I remixed it. I took it back, set it down with all the people in the room, had them listen to the song again. They all looked at each other. They looked at me, and one guy says, "I don't know what you did, but it does sound better."
That's amazing.
So just something like that, just one little thing sometimes can make all the difference for a radio release. But for an album where it's just going to be a filler song, it's fine. But because I don't like cutting any records with fillers. There's a lot of people that like doing fillers. I always try and find 12 number one songs, even though they never will be 12 number one songs. But on that particular album I had, my promoters told me that out of all the songs that was on that CD, that they only that 10 out of 12 of them they said we could take 10 out of 12 of these to radio and not worry a bit about it charting. There's only 2 that we wouldn't. I said, oh, that's cool. I can live with that.
Wow.
So I think we wound up releasing 5 songs off that album, and they all hit top 40 and did real well. So you just never know.
Yeah, that reminds me of the days of Sean Fanning and Napster, and I used to always downloaded songs 128 kilobytes per second, and you're listening to. I love the song. So yeah, but why don't you rip it at 256? Or why? Because there's an oboe in there, or there's a trumpet in there that 128 kilobytes per second won't pick it up. So if you do it at 320 kilobytes per second, you'll hear the violin, you'll hear the oboe, and you hear a snare drum, which you won't hear in 128. It's kind of amazing with music that if you didn't know there was a violin or an oboe or a snare drum in that song, you wouldn't have cared. But when you downloaded it and you ripped it at 320 kilobytes per second, you heard everything. That was pure quality.
Well, that's the difference in what we're mixing from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s to now. Because back then, stop and think about it. What was the average person listening to a song on? They was listening to it in their car radio with big speakers, or they was listening at home with tower speakers or something that had a big sound, JBL speakers or clips or whatever. Now we're mixing for earbuds.
Yes.
Big difference. Even though they say, "Oh, the sound quality is great," it's great. There's only so much music that can go through earbuds at a certain download. You've got to have the right specs, otherwise it's going to be distorted or there's going to be things that's not right. So we're mixing for earbuds. We're not mixing for the big speakers, that big sound anymore. So we've got to take and really pay attention to how we mix, so that we get that sound that really sells the song, so that when people listen to it, they listen to the parts, but they're not paying attention to the parts, but they hear it.
That's very true. I remember throughout the conversation, they asked you, "Are you any good?" And you said, "I'm kind of." But I'm thinking, what kind of key qualities do you look for in artists you choose to work with and collaborate with? Not just, "Oh yeah, I'm pretty good."
I look for singers that have attitude. The good attitude. They don't have a chip on their shoulder. They don't think that, hey, here I am. I look for quality singers. I look for people that look at it. It's going to be a marathon, not a 5K. You have to be willing to put the time in. You got to be able to not miss an interview. You've got to be making yourself available, because in today's society, the listener has hundreds of thousands of things that they can listen to other than you. You have to give them a reason to listen to you. So if you're going to take and give an attitude or have a chip on your shoulder or not show up or get a reputation that you're hard to deal with, then you're going to kill your chances of being that one that they will listen to. So I look for somebody that has that ego, that they can step on that stage, but they have that ego under control, so that they know that they're not all that. Because I remember one time I did a concert on the same stage that Elvis performed in a civic center. Okay. It was the only time that Elvis was in that civic center. Okay. So it held about 9,000 people. It wasn't huge, but it was big enough. So I was there, and we did a radio promotion. So it was a radio anniversary of something, and so my band was the one that was going to be the show for the night at the Civic Center, and they promoted it for a month before we did it. The people had to win tickets to go there. It was just a huge event, you know.
Wow.
And so here I am getting press, doing interviews, doing all this stuff. And then the night comes, and I've got thousands of people in front of me. You're huge. And it's just awesome. When we finish, the people are coming up, and autographs, the whole thing. And then the next week I'm playing in front of 200 people at a Legion Hall.
Wow.
So you've got to be able to know the difference that, yeah, that was cool, but hey, that doesn't mean that I gotta do the same performance that I did right in front of those people, in front of these 200 people that was packed for the Legion Hall. I mean, it was a full capacity. It wasn't just 200 out of empty seats, but
Wow.
still, I went from thousands to hundreds.
Wow.
So you've got to have that ego in check, so that when you do that, you go in and you give the same performance intensity in both places, because that way you're leaving an impression that hopefully people will walk away and go, man, I want to see him again when he comes back next.
That's true. That's true. People want to say, oh, I don't want to see that actor in that movie. Or I don't want to see that musician because it's so like proud. Like there was some of them are divas. I won't give her name, but she doesn't. If you don't look at her, and like Sylvester Stallone, I knew someone who used to drive celebrities around town in her limo, and he says that he's told ahead of time, listen, you're going to be picking up Sylvester Stallone. Don't talk to him, because if you do, then you're in trouble. Don't talk to him unless he talks to you. Don't say anything. And then he said, but Wesley Snipes, have a conversation with him if you want. So it's kind of silly. Like, why can't I just go up to Sylvester Stallone and say, how's it going? Like, don't, and J-Lo, she said, don't look at me. So you have to walk up to her and say, hi, I'm Chris. How are you? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I just totally refuse to do that. Because you come into this world the same, you go out of this world the same.
Exactly.
But see, that's what it was back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. People were put on that pedestal. And now they've been taken off that pedestal because of social media, because of YouTube, because they can see them all the time. So there is not anything of there's not that excitement like it would be when, oh man, I'm going to see them people. This is going to be so exciting. Now, not that it's not exciting to go to a concert and everything if you really enjoy the person, but the level intensity for most people, they're just going in there nonchalantly going to a concert like they would a football game, and it's like that pedestal's gone away. And that's not a bad thing, but it's just, you've got to realize that if that pedestal's gone away, you've got to treat people right. Otherwise, someone else is going to treat them right, and they'll go away from your movies or your songs to theirs, and you've lost a fan. And in today's society, a fan lost is like, if you lose one, it could be 1,000 or 100,000. You just never know.
Exactly.
It's a different world.
It is a different world. Tony, whatever inspired you to start your podcast? Why Not Me, the World?
That's an interesting story. During the pandemic, I decided that all the shows that I was working on went away. No concerts, no studio sessions, no nothing. It just stopped. Mm-hmm. So I decided, about 8 or 10 years ago, I'd made comments to some of my friends. When I slow down, I think I want to do another CD just for the fun of it. So a friend of mine called me up and he goes, man, what are you doing? I said, nothing, just like you, I'm doing nothing. And he goes, well, he says, it seems so I remember you was going to start a CD one time. Why don't we do it? I said, man, I forgot about that. So I started looking at songs, and I started really thinking about doing it. So I did. And then a friend of mine down in Texas wrote this song called Why Not Me?
Mm-hmm.
And one Saturday morning, I get up, I open up my emails, and there's a email from him. And he says, I just wrote this song, just finished demoed it. I think it's one of my better songs I've written. I wanted you to hear it. I played it, and I'm going, wow, this song is me. Because on my social media, I always tell people, never give up. You're never too old. Do it and just do it. Don't even think about it. Just do it. So this song was about that. Never giving up. If you've got a mountain to climb, climb it. If you got an ocean to cross it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just about that. So I told him, I said, look, I'm doing a CD for the fun of it. I really like this song. I think I'll record it. So he goes, okay. So I recorded it, and I recorded it in a pop style. And here earlier we was talking about what instrumentations to put in. So I got the song done. I recorded it kind of like a 70s song, 80s song. And then I decided, I think I'm going to add a steel in it for texture like the Eagles used to do back in the 70s. So I did. And then some friends of mine knew I was working on some stuff, and they said, send us a song you're working on. I just finished it. So I sent it to them. And everybody says, man, that's a great country song you did. I said, it's not country, but like I tell everybody, perception is reality. So if that's what they perceive, that's what it is. So I didn't fight them on it. I said, man, I'm glad you like it. So my New York promoters, my Nashville promoters, my LA promoters, my London promoters all said to me, you got to release this song. And I said, man, I'm not getting back into radio. I'm not going to go on tour. I said, I'm just doing it for the fun of it. And they all came back and they said, yeah, but there's nothing out there like it. And plus it's uplifting. It's positive. You got to release it. So I told him, I said, okay, if I'm going to release it, I'm going to take and help somebody along the way. So I got first responders to send me pictures and video clips. And once I started that, I got first responders all over the country sending me pictures and video clips. And I created a video to pay tribute to our first responders. So I put the song out, put the video out. It got about 125,000 views. And it went to like number 2 in the secondary charts of country.
Congratulations.
Here in the US. And it did really well over in the UK as well. So like anything, it has a shelf life. So that shelf life stopped. So I'm going, well, that was fun, and that was the end of it. Well, about a month later, I had this lady call me up, and she goes, can you do something like you did for us? Because I love the song. I love the video. And it turns out that she was a speech therapist for autistic children. So I told her, I said, what do you want me to do? And she goes, would you be willing to talk to our charity and see if maybe we could partner up and do something and create something to help? I said, well, I'll talk to him. I said, I don't think I'm the right person for you. And she goes, why? It's because I don't know anyone that's autistic. I don't have any autism in my family. I said, so I don't think I'm the voice. I said, but yeah, I'll talk to him. So I talked with the regional manager. They had me come up to a gala they was doing for charity, and we all talked. And I thought that it might work, but it just really didn't. So I told him, I said, you know what? I'll re-record the song in a more pop version, and I'll take and so I called it Why Not Me Nashville, the video. And I created so I got with autistic people and special needs here in Nashville, and I created a video, and it wound up getting, 250,000 hits.
Nice.
And it did well. And then I had this podcast company out of New York call me, and they said, we'd really like you to co-host a podcast with us.
Wow.
And I said, well, for how many? And they said, well, let's start out with like, say 7. I said, okay. I said, but the last 5 minutes, and it's a business podcast. We're basically going to talk about business and music business and how it all works. I said, but the last 5 minutes, we have to point an arrow towards my autism video.
Wow.
So they said, okay, we'll do that. So we did that for 2 times a month. So basically 3 months. And then they called me up and they said, man, we really like what you're doing. It's working out well. We'd like to do 10 more with you. And I said,
wow.
No, I don't think so. Because at that point in time, I had been looking at what does it take to start a podcast of my own.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt that the only way that this was going to pick up any steam was if I created my own podcast rather than just doing a 5-minute blurb on a business podcast.
Mm.
So I started Why Not Me the World in May of 2023.
Mm.
Within a couple of months, it just started blowing up. I mean,
really?
I had people from all over the world that wanted to be on the podcast.
Wow.
So now today, it's in 80 countries and over 1,200 cities around the world.
Wow.
And it's hit the Apple charts in like 17 different countries. And right now it's in Ireland, Germany,
nice.
I think the UK, because here in the US, I think it hit Canada, and I think it's in Sweden or France, and right now I think it's like number 15 or 16 in the Apple mental health charts here in the US. So it's really done well, and it continues to grow, and I'm just going to keep working on it until it just stops. And then 2 months ago, I started another podcast about entertainment, because last year everybody thought that I was going to do an entertainment podcast, and I really threw them for a loop when it came out. It was about autism, because everybody said, "Oh, I thought you'd be doing entertainment because you're in the music business." I said, "No, this just happened to turn out this way." So a couple of months ago, I started my podcast called Almost Live Nashville, and I've had Taylor Dane, Steve Hackett of Genesis, some good people on it. And just last week, it hit number 1 in the U.S. in Apple charts for music.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate with my podcast doing well in 2 different categories.
I'm like over 100,000 views, and I have almost 250 episodes, but I've never had anything like you'd have. It's been like 3 years, and I guess it's because you're on more than just YouTube. You're on Spotify, Buzzsprout, and all those other ones.
Yeah. I'm Buzzsprout handles is my host, and then it goes out to all the Spotify and Apple and all the podcast platforms, plus YouTube as well.
I'll have to start doing that because I'm just on YouTube. Maybe that's why I'm not gathering steam. Wow.
Well, you never know. I mean, it's I don't begin to understand how it works. If you ask me how the radio charts and the record charts work, I can tell you. I can dig right into say this has to happen, this has to happen. But when it gets into these podcast charts, I don't have a clue. It's like just the other day, was it last week? I was number 1 in the U.S. and I noticed all of a sudden I'm number 1 in France. It's like, how did that happen? And it's like, and then, so it's and this podcast, I've my Why Not Me the World reached number 2 in Great Britain, and it reached number 4 in the U.S. It reached number 6 in Canada. It's been, all over the world, 17 or 18 different countries in the charts, plus 80 cities and over 80 countries and over 1,200 cities around the world. I've been fortunate.
Yeah. How do you select guests for your podcast?
They find me. I've had people on the music side that friends of mine and say, "Hey, you want to come on my podcast?" And then they'll tell somebody else, and then all of a sudden, I've got people coming in. I've got a publicist in the UK and a publicist here in Nashville that every now and then they'll say, "Hey, I think I've got somebody for you." But now, Why Not Me the World? Autism? They just find me. They just find me. And I think it's because now next month I'm starting to do something special, because I'm hitting so many charts in the mental health side. I'm going to expand and do a bonus episode each month just on mental health and not autism. So like next month, I've got Justin Peck. He's a Baja 100 race car driver, and he's bipolar and almost killed himself here a few years ago. And he comes in and tells me his story. So I'm going to do once a month with something that's about mental health, and then because the rest of the month will be about autism. But I got to tell you, when I finish editing my entertainment podcast and it's done and I'm ready to upload it to my platform, I go, man, this feels good. This feels good. But when I finish editing and uploading my podcast for autism, I feel like I've accomplished something, because it's just a different feeling that I'm actually helping people tell their stories to other people that they might be helping by hearing their stories. So it's a much more different situation.
Yeah, I can recommend someone. His name's Kevin Hines, and at some point in his life, he wanted to commit suicide because life was nothing to him. All he wanted was someone to say hi,
Yeah.
and no one said hi. So he went to the Brooklyn Bridge, I think.
Yeah.
No, San Francisco Bridge. Sorry, Golden
Okay.
Gate Bridge, and he jumped off.
Wow.
And he said that when he was in the air and about to drop down into his death, he regretted it. And guess what happened? He landed on top of a sea lion seal that was not even supposed to be in there. He landed on it, saved his life, and now he's going around talking about mental health and suicide. And you should check him
Oh,
out, Kevin Hines. You should connect with him.
yeah. Yeah. Do you know him?
I don't know him. I was planning to have him on. I have a second podcast, but sounds like he's too busy. But maybe he might get a chance to be on yours because you're famous and arrogant. I mean, you're good. just kidding.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. Yeah. What'd you say his name was? Kevin what?
Kevin Hines.
Kevin Hines. Okay.
Yeah, look him up. He's got the YouTube channel and he's got his whole he's got a TED Talk. What happened and why?
Okay. Yeah, that would be a great one, because one of the guys that this Justin Peck that I just had on, his story is just fantastic. He was like 25, 26 years old. He had everything going for him. He was an entrepreneur, successful business, wife, 2 or 3 kids,
Wow.
everything to live for. He goes up on top of this cliff.
Really?
And his dog is running around, and he picks up a gun and he pulls the trigger, puts it to his head and pulls the trigger. And it didn't go off. And the adrenaline was going so much, he drove down to the bottom of the cliff, called his therapist, and got in with a therapist, and it changed his life. And he wrote a book called Bulletproof.
Oh, yeah, I know. Justin Peck, yes.
Yes.
I know him. I know him. Yeah.
Yeah, and the bullet actually the hammer actually hit the bullet. It just didn't ignite.
Oh, wow, really? That happens?
Yes. It's just a tremendous story. And now he's turned his life around. He created a foundation to help mental health. He back here a couple of months ago when the hurricane come up through the Carolinas, he went out and helped them. He's really, just amazing story. So my feeling is now it's like, I'm just trying. I'm trying to give back as much as I can, still stay in my music, doing what I'm doing, and just really enjoy talking to these people. And now I've been doing this for almost 2 years with the autism. And before I started, I only knew autism was a word. I didn't know anything about it.
You don't know
And
anything
now
about
I
it,
can carry
really?
on conversations with people. I still don't know, but I can still, like, here just last week, the Happy Days this year is 50 years old. So
Yeah.
last
Yes.
week in Gallatin, we had the Fonz, we had Potsy, and we had Ralph Mouth at a Comic-Con here in a town outside of Nashville. And I was there, because I produced Donny Most. So I
Mhm.
was there, and there was several other stars there, and because all the stuff that was going on, and this couple and their daughter come up and talked with me because they heard that I had a podcast about autism, and their daughter was 33, nonverbal and
Oh, wow.
and autistic, and she was just standing there, just you could tell that she was just happy to be alive. She was sitting, she was very comfortable in her skin. She was
Mhm.
very peaceful. She was just very smiling all the time. But they come up and here they don't know me, but because they heard what I do, they come up, they told me the whole story, about what was going on. I said, man, you needed to, I hate for people tell me their story. I should have just had you come on my podcast and tell your story,
Wow.
but it was such a warm feeling that they felt better because they told me their story about their daughter, and the daughter stood there just smiling and happy and content, and that makes it all worthwhile.
Wow, that's exciting because I have a second podcast, but it's basically for people who want to give their testimonies of, um, and I got to get that one going. That only has like 41 subscribers, but um, I'm thinking, I'm thinking that maybe once a month do like a theme, like maybe once a
Yeah.
month I'll do one on mental health, another month I'll do one on AI. So devote the entire podcast episode
Right.
to that
Right.
one specific thing. I might do that.
Yeah.
Um, Guitar player, talk about how the guitar works. Well, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. What do you
Yeah.
with your podcast? What do you hope listeners will take away from it?
Well, with the Why Not Me the World, I hope that they take away something that can help them in their life, because I have people on that can tell their stories of how they found out they were autistic or how they deal with autism and later in life been diagnosed. Or I have doctors or
Hmm.
ABA therapists or
Wow.
different people on. And I'm just hoping in the 30 minutes that I talk with them that somebody that's listening will hear it and say, that's an that I haven't tried that. Maybe I can try that with my son or daughter. Maybe that'll help. I'm just hoping that if one person gets something out of it, then it's a success.
Wow, that's amazing, Tony. I really appreciate that. Everyone, everything will be linked down below for Tony, especially his podcasts and all the information you need. Even I think you said that specific song, the name of your podcast, is actually a video out there on the internet as well. In
Yes,
YouTube, I
why
can
not
find it.
me?
On YouTube, I can find it on YouTube.
Yep. Yeah, why not me? And why not me, Nashville?
Excellent. So one more question is, what kind of advice would you give to up and coming podcasters, producers, anybody in music? Is there some you that will help everyone in no matter what they do?
The one thing that I tell everybody, no matter what they're doing, music, podcasts, whatever songwriting, doesn't matter whether they want to be a TV journalist, whatever they want to be, put your best work out there always, because after a certain amount of time, you don't realize at the time that you're doing it what it's going to be. But after you've got that certain amount of time that you've done it and you look back at your body of work,
Mhm.
you don't want to have anything in there that you hear and you cringe. Oh man, I should have done that. You know, always put your best work out. So if it takes you a little bit extra time to edit it, if it takes you a little extra time to learn that part, whatever you have to do, make sure it's the best that you can do, because each time that someone listens to you, watches you, um, listens to your song, whatever it might be, they're judging you without judging you. They're not going in there, oh, I'm going to listen to them and judge them. They're listening to them, and while they're listening, they're judging them to whether they want to hear them again. And then you just never know. If you put out a great body of work, you never know who's around that next corner that might make a difference in your career or your life or something that you're trying to do. So always put out your best work.
That's amazing. I remember finding out someone had said, like there were show performers, like musical in musicals, whether they did a small musical in a library for children or they did a big musical in the venue. They'd always treat it like they were doing it in front of the Queen.
You
They
have
treat it
to.
the same way. Yeah,
You have to,
you have
because
to.
now some people think they're being arrogant or chip on their shoulder because why are you being so picky? But in the bottom line of everything, you have to be picky when you're putting something out there that reflects upon your reputation.
That's true. That's true. Thank you, Tony. Wow. It's great that we had this. It's so good to have this time together. Turbinet. This is awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Tony.
Yeah, I
Your
appreciate it.
insights, you're welcome. Your insights in the music industry and your journey have been truly inspiring. Thank you for sharing your time and stories with us. I really appreciate that. Okay, everyone, we're going to end the stream. Thank you, Tony Mantor, for everything. Really inspirational interview. Really appreciate it. Before we go, I've been noticing your record albums and your pictures in the back. What are those? Like autograph photos and
Yeah, well, the two autograph photos that I have the one that I'll always keep is right behind me, and that's Elvis. He, I
wow.
got him. That's his tour. Back when he was on tour, that was what he was using for signatures to give out or sell on at shows. And I had a friend of mine that was working for him, and I got him to get me an autographed in pen signature on it. So I got
Wow.
that. And then because right next to him is Reba, she signed it for me. And then
Nice, my
Chris
favorite.
on the other on the other shelf, you see, of course, Cher. You know, that I met her
Yeah.
back in late, I don't know, the 2008, 2009 at Walter Reed Hospital up in Washington D.C. So yeah, it's just some of the things that I've got, some of the things I've done.
Amazing. Wow. Tony Mantor, everyone, directly straight from Nashville.
Yes,
Oh, you're
thanks.
an hour. Yeah, you're an hour behind. So you want the lottery numbers? And just kidding.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, Tony. Thanks. Pleasure being with you. Thank you for discussing and thank you for the opportunity to interview you. Okay,
Yeah,
everyone.
thanks.
Ending the stream.